Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. I have been having a look at what might be out there and what Leeds might be able to get between now and the start of the new season. We've already confirmed a lot of signings, but I still feel that we need a few more, and I would like to see us have at least what could be classed as a playable new 11 to complement the squad that we've got already. So I'll just briefly go through who we've got already and then the ones that I've added to make it a full 11. So we've already signed Gabriel Gudmundsson. Now I've had to remove the vowels from his name just to fit it all on. So that's why it looks wrong. It won't fit Gudmundsson on, it's too long of a name. But yeah, so Gabby Gudmundsson, Swedish left back, he's in for about 10 or 11 million. Jakobiol, Slovenian, very large centre back. I don't think much will get beyond him. It's like running into a brick wall. He's a unit. He's come in for somewhere between, I think, 15 and 17 million. Seb Bono, quite a cheap buy really in the scheme of things. He's come in for just 5 million, the Belgian. But yeah, he's through the door. Anton Stark, 6'4". He is stacked, and he's fully aware of what's gone on social media, because on his little welcome video to the fans, he pronounced his name in about 3 different variations. Even Anton doesn't know how his surname's pronounced. But yeah, and like Jakobiol, an absolute unit. I mean, I can't wait to see how these new players get on. I really can't. It's going to be fascinating. Alongside him, a player very well known to English football, Sean Longstaff, signed from Newcastle. Stack was around £17 million, 17 to 18. Longstaff, 12 million with the possibility rising to 15 million. And then up front, Lucas Nemecha gotten on a free transfer. So that's who's in the door so far. So how can we complement those new guys that have come in to potentially create a new and realistic 11? I'd love for the Leeds to get Lionel Messi. They're not going to get him. Anyway, so in terms of players that they could potentially get, but more importantly the ones that are very, very strongly rumoured, or at least have been rumoured at some point. So starting in goal, Lucas Perry. He seems the most likely new goalkeeper to join us. From what I can gather, everything's done. We've agreed a fee with Leon, believed to be in and around £15 million. He's basically signed everything. As far as I know, he's just having his medical in Germany whilst the Leeds team are on tour in Germany. There's every possibility that, I mean, as far as I'm aware, our next friendly is against Paderborn, and there's every possibility that Lucas Perry may play in that. So with that, yeah, Lucas Perry very much looking like the goalkeeper that is favourite to sign for Leeds now, ahead of all the other targets. And we've had a lot of goalkeeper targets over this last few weeks. So to complete the back line, now Bogle has started pre-season like a man on a mission. He looks excellent, very technical on the ball, very pacey going forward with the ball, very effective going forward. I still question his defensive capabilities, but he looks on it. I have to give him credit. He has looked like one of our best players in pre-season so far. But he's going to need backup, because if we don't keep Bogle fit for the entire season, we've got Byram as backup. We don't know what's happening with Schmidt. So how about we look at getting a player who has played in the Premier League before? Tomiyasu, the former Arsenal guy. Now, the one thing that would prevent us from signing him is the fact that he's injured until approximately October. But he would be a free transfer, a Japanese international, experienced, has played in the Premier League at the highest level. I think with him being on a free, I don't think his wages would be through the roof, especially based on that injury record. He's just going to be looking to get back into a Premier League side again, or a team in the top, one of the top 5 divisions in Europe, and he's going to want to play, and he's going to want to fight for his place. And I just think that this could be a very shrewd signing, very much like Nemecha. I don't know. It's a long shot, and as I say, he's going to miss the first month or two. But on a free, meaning then we wouldn't have to spend anything, meaning then that we can put our funds elsewhere, especially in those forward lines, on the wings. I don't know. I don't think it'd be a bad shout. I don't know how he passes a medical while having an injury. I don't know how any player does. But if he could somehow pass a medical, because he does have a dodgy injury record, that's why Arsenal's released him. But I just wonder, out of all the available people, it's clear that Bogle's being looked at as being a first team player this season. And if that's the case, he's going to need backup. And as I say, we've got good backup in Byram and possibly Schmidt. But I see Byram as the backup for the left back position for Gary Goodmanson. Or that's how the club sees him, at least. But the good thing about Byram is that naturally he's a right back, so he can cover both sides. But I still feel we need one more. And Tomiyasu, when fit, ticks a lot of the boxes. So, moving up. A player that was linked with Leeds some time ago, but it's all gone very quiet since. He's still quite young, he's only about 22, 23. Swiss player Alvin Sanchez. Now, unlike Stack, who is very much a defensive midfielder, and unlike Sean Longstaff, who is naturally an 8, a very centralised, midfield general, midfield leader, Sanchez is a player that is capable of playing anywhere in that midfield area, but does have a little bit more attacking prowess about him. Now, it looks very much like we're going to play a 4-3-3 this season. But when you've got 3 midfielders, you still need one of them that is capable of getting forward and chipping in with some G&A. And there's a possibility that Sanchez could fit that bill. As I say, he's still young. He's a reasonable height. And he's, as far as I know, I think he might only have 1 year left on his contract. So I think the estimated price would be somewhere around 15 million, which for a 22, 23-year-old is not a bad price. There's a lot of potential there. And as I say, in the past, he has been linked. He's currently with Lausanne in Switzerland, as far as I'm aware. And I don't know. I just think he could complement, just add that little bit of pace and a little bit more dynamism. You know, you've got Stack, who's going to be a very much anchorman defensive unit in front of the back four. You've got Longstaff, who he's going to be very comfortable, really good passer of the ball, sitting in the middle of the park there. Then you've got your young, energetic player like Sanchez, who could then, you know, like in possession it's a 4-3-3. Out of possession it becomes a 4-5-1. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So I don't think Sanchez would be a bad buy. You know, maybe Isaac Schmidt knows him and possibly would be able to pull a few strings in terms of persuading Daniel to bring him to the club, or to at least have another look at him. I don't know. And with him being a bit younger, he's got that potential. And it wouldn't break the bank. You know, it's another player under £20 million. You know, we've done very well so far in not spending over 20 million on anybody. But it's looking like we're bringing in some good players. And I just wonder, could Sanchez... And I know that Farker has suggested that we're not getting any more midfielders, but if we're going to be reverting to a 4-3-3, we've got 5 at the moment. We've got 5 central midfielders in the squad. You know, the others being Gruev, Ampadu, and Tanaka. I mean, you know, Gruev's looked good in pre-season so far. He's another one that's done well. But if, you know, let's say for example, if someone in Germany comes in and buys him, we bought him for 5 million. I reckon if someone comes in with somewhere between 10 and 15 million, the club might decide, you know what, we'll let him go. But then the club's going to need another player. Because here's the thing, even though Ampadu is captain, does he start? When you've got the likes of Stack and Longstaff. I mean, I think the idea is going to be, from Farker, that his 3-man midfield is going to be Stack, Longstaff and Ampadu. But can you really keep a player like Tanaka on the bench? I mean, you need quality. You need quality in the squad. And you've got 5 very good central midfielders there. But I don't think it's a dead cert that Ampadu starts. And it's questionable as to whether Pascal Strout then starts. And then Melier, who was the other vice-captain, he might be on his way now that we're on the verge of getting Perry. So there's going to have to be a bit of a rejig in terms of the captains within the club. I think Longstaff might be made a vice-captain. I honestly do. I think Longstaff becomes a vice-captain. Because he's going to be on the pitch more than quite a few of the others. All that experience that he's got. I don't know, just a hunch. So moving on to these other potential players, let's start with the one that's still very heavily rumoured at the moment, and that is Igor Paixão. Igor, Paixão. Paixão. Who knows? It could be another Stack. Who knows? But the point is, this fella can play. He's a very, very effective GNA when it comes to playing for Feyenoord at the moment. The one sticking point is the price tag. Feyenoord want somewhere along the lines of £30 million, and this is where Leeds have to decide: are they going to be brave and bold and spend a big chunk of change on one player, or are they going to look at other targets? Now, there is still rumours that Marseille in France are still wanting Paixão, and there's rumours of other teams being interested as well. There's a couple in Italy that want him, but there's not a lot of money in Italy right now. They won't be able to stump... I think possibly only Juventus could stump up 30 million for anybody. There's genuinely not a lot of money in Italy right now. Marseille, they could. I mean, they compete in Europe every year, don't they, of some description. So 30 million wouldn't be a drastic amount to them. But apparently they've buckled on the price. Now, rumours are they offered somewhere in and around of about maybe £25 million, but they refused to put add-ons on. It is rumoured that Leeds are considering a flat-out 30 million bid with add-ons, and this is why Feyenoord are considering it. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know. This is just what I've heard. It's a lot of money, and it would be a record transfer for Leeds with the 29 million that we spent on Rodrigo Moreno. Being the previous record, and probably wages as well. But again, Rodrigo Moreno was the highest earner on 99 grand a week when we were last in the Premier League. It would be an exciting signing, and bearing in mind we have had a player of a similar calibre, shall we say, in Rafinha, and they're both Brazilian. So the thing that's going around at the moment is, could Paixão be the next Rafinha? I mean, Rafinha's done fantastically well for himself, hasn't he? Made a name for himself at Leeds, got his dream transfer to Barcelona, and he's absolutely ripping it up for Barca. You know, he's doing fantastically well. Pleased for him. You know, he made his intentions very clear very early on that he wanted to move to Barca, way before leaving Leeds, and you can't blame him for joining, arguably the biggest club in the world. You know, I've been to the new camp. It's banging, right? The new camp is an incredible experience, and if you've never been, just go. It's phenomenal. It really is. 100,000 all-seater stadium. Really, they've got all the old architecture still there. Takes a bloody age to get to that top stand. The top of the biggest stand, which is where I ended up sitting. Yeah, I'd recommend it. I really would. Barca played against Atletico Madrid and walloped them 6-1. Messi was just. I've never seen a footballing performance like it, and I will never see a footballing performance like it again. And I could see someone like Paixão maybe getting to that kind of height eventually. But he's got to prove himself first, because the Eredivisie is not La Liga, and it's definitely not the Premier League. In the Eredivisie, you've got three very big teams in Feyenoord, Ajax and PSV. All the teams after that are not of the same level. If you look at the history and the titles they've won and even their experiences in Europe in the past. Those are your big three in Holland. All very good teams. And Paixão's part of one of them. So, do we splash the cash on Igor Paixão, or do we look for other targets? I mean, it is rumoured that Leeds have other targets, and they've quoted them as being players of a similar level to Paixão. Now, this means that the club must have scouted at least Europe-wide, if not worldwide, and found a player that's got a similar kind of DNA and a similar player profile in terms of what they can bring as a footballer, in terms of the skill set and what they can bring to a team. Now, I haven't heard of that many having the DNA stats that Paixão's had in recent times, but I'm not a professional scout. So, that'd be that. But it would be, it'd be a statement signing. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And when you look at the players that have been signed for around £30 million by other clubs in the Premier League, is it really that bad? That you're spending 30 million on a player? I think maybe not. It's big for Leeds because they've only just gone up. But 30 million to, like a Liverpool who are splashing, what is it? They spent about 123 million on Florian Wirtz. Like, Wirtz is, he's obviously a class player, but is he worth 123 million quid or whatever they've spent on it? Is he worth 100 million? I'm not so sure. Only time will tell on that. If he ends up lighting up the Premier League, then maybe. But, Paixão to us, it'd be like Wirtz to Liverpool. It'd be a very big statement signing. So we'll see on that one. It's still in the pipeline. That's the important thing. The possible signings of Lucas Perry and Igor Paixão are still on the table. They are still possibilities. Tomiyasu and Sanchez are just Tomiyasu is just one I've pulled out of the bag. Right? I had a look at who was available on a free transfer, and I thought, you know what, Bogle's going to need a backup. Tomiyasu could be that guy. Sanchez was officially rumoured, but it was about a month ago. It's quietened down massively on Alvin Sanchez. Paixão is, Perry and Paixão are properly linked, with the club at this moment in time in terms of the rumoured transfers. So finally, to complete this potential 11, and I've mentioned him on previous video that I did. He has been rumoured again, a bit like Sanchez. It was about a month ago. Now it's quietened down since. But it's the Japan international Daizen Maeda. Currently at Celtic. Good player. Again, another player with a good GNA. Can play up front as a 10, on the wing. Apparently most comfortable on the wing. And I just think that he would tick a lot of boxes. I don't think that the club would offer any more than £20 million, and it would be questionable as to whether Celtic would accept 20. I saw a Celtic fan put a comment on the previous video saying you can have him for 50, or you can have him for 45, or whatever. Leeds won't spend that. They won't spend 50 million on Rodrigo Muniz, who is the rumoured striker to be of interest to Leeds. He's currently playing at Fulham. Now, I don't think that Muniz is worth anywhere near 50 million at the moment. Absolutely not. He's probably worth 20 to 25. But Fulham don't want rid of him, which is why they've hiked his price tag up. Now, Leeds currently have spent under £100 million. And you saw what Ipswich did last season. They spent about £150 million. You would have to assume that Leeds have got that available in terms of PSR. They've certainly got it available in terms of the ownership. The ownership will give them I reckon the ownership would give them 200 million. And they won't bat an eyelid on it. Because the 49ers and the York family know how vital it is for Leeds United to stay in the Premier League. So, they will push, I truly believe they will push the PSR limit as far as they can without getting a points deduction. Nottingham Forest just signed about 1 million players once, over two transfer windows in one season. And they were even letting players go that they'd signed in that first, in the summer window. They were letting them go in the winter window. It was almost like a player experimentation at Forest, which I think they should have. I think they should have been punished for it personally. But they did what they did, and now look at them. They're a comfortable top half Premier League side, and very nearly got into Europe if they haven't already. They might well have done. I can't remember now. So, do Leeds break the bank and bring in Maeda and Paixão? Because there's still rumours that Leeds will sign another striker. It's not confirmed that Nemecha is going to be the first choice number 9. And especially if Leeds end up losing both Bamford and Joseph, which is strongly on the cards, Bamford's going to be playing in the under-21 match to keep his fitness up that we've got going on against Simon Grayson's Hartlepool. Of which Johnny Howson is on the bench, so it is confirmed that Howson, at the very least, is reconnected with Leeds United again, which I think is great. I think that's brilliant. You know, Howson's one of our own. Get him involved in coaching. Leeds under-21s is the perfect place for him to learn. And he'll know Scotty Gardner as well. I think they're from a similar age bracket from when they both came through the Leeds youth. Maybe Gardner slightly older, not by much though. They'll have known each other through the age brackets, I think. So yeah, the rumour is that Nemecha won't be the only striker, and that would be understandably so, because if you've got Nemecha replacing Joseph, we then need a number 9 to replace Bamford. Now, in terms of stature, Nemecha's more similar to Bamford, of course. Good, solid build. I mean, I wish Bamford all the best, I really do. If we're not going to use him, then, you know, we bought him for about £7 million. We're not going to get £7 million back. If we could get 2 or 3, I think it's a good return for a player who, if he stays fit, you've got a good Championship striker there, and I don't care what anybody says. At his best, he's a goal scorer. I mean, you don't. It's no fluke that you score 17 goals in a Premier League season. I'm sorry, it's no fluke. He got more in the Premier League than he did in the Championship. You know, maybe someone like, I mean, it'd be totally against the grain at Sunderland. You know, if Sunderland were to buy him, because they just buy kids. Burnley, unlikely. They've had him on loan before and he didn't do very much there. But he did better in the Premier League for Leeds, getting 17 than the 15 that he got in the Championship. But again, would a Birmingham or a Wrexham take him on, perhaps? Maybe. Would any of the 3 teams that have just come down take him on? Again, possible. You know, for a couple of million. What have they got to lose? It's, you know, he's 31-year-old, but he can still go. Bamford could still go if you can keep him fit, and he can still score goals. Look at the hat-trick he got against Villa. Look at the goal he got in the cup against Peterborough. Those are class goals, right? You don't lose class. You don't lose quality. You know, Pablo Hernandez, 35 years old at Leeds. I think, if I've got this right, on his final game he was like 34 or 35, and he was still class. You know, you don't lose that quality. And I'm only giving a couple of examples here. So yeah, so for me, I mean, as things stand, Nemecha obviously becomes first choice until somebody else comes in. Joel Perreault, obviously, he's going to look at it and think, well, hold on a minute. Nemecha's here, I need to now up my game, because even though Nemecha's not known for being a quality goal scorer, he's still a unit and adds that physical presence. I think he'll be able to hold the ball up. He looks quite pacey for a guy that size, actually. He looks like he can move. And, you know, the goal against Vale was just fox in the box stuff. He was in the right place, right time. So it's only a tap-in. But it gives Nemecha that little bit of confidence. It's like, right, I'm in the right place at the right time. Brilliant ball into the box from Ramazani, and boom, in it goes. So Nemecha will gain confidence from that. And he looked genuinely happy. He looked genuinely happy when he scored that goal, and so he should do. You know, that's unofficially that's his first goal for Leeds United. Doesn't matter how they happen. You know, if a striker scores 10 tap-ins out of scoring however many goals they score in a season, who cares? Fans ain't going to care. They're going to be happy that they scored. So there we go. So yeah, I just think, you know, if we had this kind of 11, And again, you might swap. You could swap Maeda and Paixão in terms of the wings. You might, Longstaff and Sanchez's positions may kind of interchange a little bit, perhaps. But generally speaking, this is how it would look, and I don't mind it. I think that 11 would cause problems for Premier League teams, certainly the bottom half. I think that 11's as good as any bottom half 11 in the Premier League. Once they get to know each other and once they get going, I think there's some quality there. I could be wrong. They could be crap. I hope not. I really hope not. But the last time that we were in the Premier League, when Marsh came in and we started signing all these players for 10 million each, and you could just tell that they were they really were only of somewhere between 5 and 10 million, 12 million tops. They weren't that great. They certainly weren't good enough for Leeds at the time, and that's why Leeds got relegated. The likes of Rocker for 10 million, I mean, he was non-existent in midfield, wasn't he, most of the time. Christensen, full of mistakes at right back. They were both bought for 10 million each. Robin Koch was a little bit better, German centre back. Llorente, 17 million. He had errors in him. Rafinha was 17, 18 million, but he was very good. He got about 20 G&A in about 60 appearances. But it was just that flair that he brought to the table, wasn't it? And he was playing in a very, I wouldn't say a very poor Leeds side, just a poorly managed side. So, times have changed, squad's completely different, but we're starting to build a team now that might hopefully be suitable for the Premier League. As I said on a previous video, we've got players with Premier League experience in the squad already, but we need to up the quality. So folks, how would this 11 do in the Premier League? If Leeds could get all of these and get them all fit, get them all fully fit, and get them all playing in sync, how do you think this 11 would cope? Could this 11 do a job in the Premier League? Or would it get relegated? That's the question. So do please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I think it'd just survive, I don't think there'd be so much pressure on Nemecha to get the goals. I think that the goals would come from Paixão and Maeda. Certainly with Nemecha chipping in, of course. And if they could give him the service, maybe Nemecha comes away with 10 goals himself. But I think you get at least 30 goals out of that front three of Paixão, Nemecha and Maeda. I think you get at least 10 each, and then even more from the two wide boys. And I think maybe even Sanchez chips in with a few. Maybe one or two from Longstaff. I don't know. That would be the hope. There's 38 games in the season. In an ideal world, you'd score twice as much, and you wouldn't concede any more than 38. That's in an ideal world, but Leeds aren't there yet. That's the kind of statistics that a top 5, top 6 team would come out with, and probably even better. So, we've just got to do enough to get 40 points for the season. I know some people say 35 is enough. Some people say 30 is enough, some people say 38 is enough. I still like that magic 40. I really do. I still think that 40 is, because here's the thing, if you aim for 35, you end up scoring 30. So if you aim for 40, you're going to get somewhere between 35 and 40. You can't expect to achieve the aim. There's no guarantee that you achieve the aim. So always aim higher, so that if you don't quite reach it, you're going to get somewhere close. So Leeds have to have that 40-point mark in mind. I don't think that Farke will be allowing them to have any pressure on themselves to reach 40, but that, to me, if Leeds got relegated with 40 points based on the last couple of seasons, that would be devastating. But I think that would do it. You get the magic 40 points, and then the following season you get Premier League money at that point. And once you get the Premier League money, you then build that squad. All the ones that are still with the squad that came up from the Championship, you will have then had a chance to see what they can do in the Premier League. And any that can't cut it, boom, you're gone. Sell them all for a few million each. Their stock value will have gone up because they've been playing in the Premier League as opposed to the Championship. And you can then start to use some of that money to boost your PSR limit, to be able to spend more money, build a better squad, and become established. Look at your Brightons, Brentfords and Bournemouths. It's Triple B. All three of those, they're three of the teams that have, people have been talking about them, haven't they? Saying the 3 Bs. These are the three that have really, they've gone about things the right way and got themselves up to where they are now. There's others that have established: Forest, Wolves. Like when were Palace last in the Championship? Crystal Palace are deemed one of the most boring teams in the Premier League, but you can't argue with them being an established team. Been there ages now. Look at the teams that have never been relegated. Everton. They've flirted with relegation on numerous occasions, but they've never been relegated since the Premier League formed. These are the kind of heights that Leeds, if given the opportunity, need to try and aspire to a little bit, and eventually get back to the Leeds United of the early 2000s. But that's going to take a long, long time. That I could be 50-year-old by the time that happens, and I'm 41 now. I'm realistic about this. The first challenge is to stay in the league. And if we got an 11, something like that, and bearing in mind, this 11 doesn't necessarily start every game, but it enhances the overall squad quality. That's the point I'm making. That you've got players like, Pirro would argue that he should start ahead of Nemecha. Nonto and Ramazani and James would argue that they should be able to start on the wings. Ampadu, club captain, he's going to argue that he starts. Tanaka, box-to-box midfielder, can do a bit of everything. He'd argue that he'd start. Gruev, gets all the defensive basics correct in the middle of the park and a good pass for the ball. He'd argue that he'd start. Strauch and Rodon, what have they done wrong? They were the second best defensive partnership in the entire Championship division last season. They're both big units. If you look at the stature of player that we've been signing, they're all big, tall boys, aren't they? Well, so are Strauch and Rodon. They're not short. And Strauch's very effective from set pieces. He can score goals, right? He can score goals from set pieces, can Pascal Strauch. You get the ball on his head, he'll do the rest. So I don't think any of this is a gimme, right? I don't think it's a given that if we did have this 11 that they'd all start. The ones that we spent more money on, you could argue maybe, and I would imagine that Goodmanson has been brought in as a complete replacement for Junior Firpo. So, there is that to consider as well. But for me, this 11 would be a good 11. It's just a case of whether we can sign them all. I'm not sure. Paixão is a very complicated deal, but it's pretty much confirmed that the club are trying to get him. It's gone quiet on Sanchez and Maeda. I don't think we get either of those two. I'd be very happy if we did, but I don't think we do. Tomiyasu, I just had a look at the free transfer list, and he's available. And if you can get Tomiyasu fit, it's a good amount of experience to bring in on a free transfer. And obviously, being a free allows you to spend money on the likes of Paixão, Sanchez and Maeda. Because bearing in mind, there's another striker. They're going to buy another striker, whoever that is. We've not really been linked with that many strikers. I might do another little video just on the striker situation. See who's available, see who stood out, you know, in their respective leagues last season. And do something with that. But yeah, there we go, folks. That is that. So I've spoken about this 11 and a couple of other things here over the last 40 minutes, so let's leave it at that. Big thank you for watching. Do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and do please give the video a thumbs up like, it really does help. I'm going to keep churning out more Leeds United content. Thoroughly excited and thoroughly looking forward to the season ahead. And I just hope Leeds get it right in this transfer market. If they can get this summer transfer window right, then I think we'll be okay. Cross fingers. But with that in mind, folks, big thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.